What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Water Cooler Talk. My name is Caleb Turner, and I'm a sports writer at KSL.com. It is Sunday, June 8th. We're coming at you with another episode, a little recap of the week's events. As it is summer, you would think it's a bit of a down period for sports. And as far as the games go, the box scores, the X's and O's it may be, except for those maybe, watching NBA Finals, a little French Open, a little soccer still going on. But there's still, some off the court, off field stuff going on. Plenty of stories still taking up the headlines, both on KSL.com and all over the country when it comes to sports. So we're going to do a quick rundown here of some recent news items to get you ready for your Monday morning conversations with coworkers and friends, where you may be filling up that giant Stanley Cup, that giant water bottle with the H2O or beverage of choice. Maybe maybe it's more of a soda fountain talk. I know we are in Utah. We always love the dirty sodas. In fact, I drove by. Quick anecdote. This is the time of year, summer. Kids are out of school. You see lemonade stands around, right? Well, today this is a first for me. I saw a dirty soda stand. Some kids set up outside their house, a little sign, and they're mixing drinks. We got mixologists out here, mixing up, your dirty Dr. Peppers. We got your Diet Coke with lime, your energy drinks, maybe a little Mountain Dew with some flavors in there. So, let me know if you guys spot some of those around the valley, maybe putting Swig out of business. So. That is beside the point, but maybe it's not a water cooler. Maybe it is a soda fountain for some of you. And to begin, we will be talking about a couple of the bigger news items. We had some conference realignment with some colleges. We'll talk a little bit about that. But I want to start out with the Utah Jazz. Obviously, still, you probably argue the biggest team in the state. Um, and they had a bit of a change, in addition, I should add, to their front office, their leadership, the decision makers when it comes to the Utah Jazz. And it's an important time of the year with the NBA draft coming up in a couple weeks. We got free agency and the offseason in the NBA. Maybe it used to be boring, but it is anything but boring these days. So the Jazz hired Austin Ainge, and I know you might be thinking the last name sounds a little familiar. He is Danny Ainge's son, as president of basketball operations. Austin Ainge in the front office of the Boston Celtics for a long period of time, also his father's former team that he worked for. Um, and now he comes to the Utah Jazz to join his father, Danny Ainge, who I believe is CEO, and Justin Zanuck, general manager, as to make up that kind of, the leadership group, as it were, of the Jazz. But it seems like his role might even be a little bigger than just being part of the team. It sounds like he'll kind of be the guy. And, Ryan Smith, the owner, and Danny Ainge both saying, Austin's, the buck stops with him. He's going to be calling the shots, running the program, I believe was the phrase that was used in press conferences. So you kind of got a new guy in charge here, a new guy to get mad at in the comments of our Jazz articles and also non-Jazz articles at times when it comes to what's going on with the Utah Jazz. But his first comment, or at least one of his comments that went viral, is something that I think Jazz fans will really like and hopefully not comment negatively about, which was he was asked about tanking. Obviously, the Jazz purpose. Okay, I'll be careful with how I word this, but I'll just say the Jazz didn't win a lot of games this year, and they played their young players. Larry Markkinen and some of the more veteran players did not play maybe as much as they could have, and as a result, the Jazz had the worst record in the league in franchise history. In an effort to get the number one pick, end up with the number five pick, so it basically didn't work. And so he was asked about that. Will there be a similar game plan, for lack of a better term, I guess, for this upcoming season? Will the Jazz be strategically maybe manipulating games lineups in the upcoming year? And Austin Ainge said, quote, "You won't see that this year." Great. So I suppose that means we will be seeing a more competitive Jazz team. More than the 17 wins or whatever it was this year. We'll see, based on how the draft goes, based on if some trades go down, if Markkanen does end up leaving, if Jordan Clarkson ends up leaving, and it is just a bunch of young guys, well, they won't really have a choice. And so, if you don't have the veterans, you can't sit the veterans and you just play the young guys. So we'll see exactly how that works out. But it seems like, at least for the moment, the plan is to be a little more competitive from the Jazz. And I think people attending the games here in Salt Lake City at the Delta Center will appreciate that a little more this upcoming season. So shout out Austin Ainge. We'll see where he decides to go with some decisions coming up. Like I mentioned, just a few short weeks before the NBA draft. Jazz with 4 picks in that draft. We'll be talking a lot more about that as it gets closer. Um, hopefully, possibly have some guests on, maybe talk with our guy, Ryan Miller. Check out his stuff on KSL.com, talking about the Jazz. He's got great stuff also on Austin Ainge. So that's coming up, and we'll see how they use those 4 picks. Do they keep him? Do they trade him? They trade up higher than the number 5 pick. I am not sure. We also discussed some of the options they have at that number 5 pick, even on this podcast just a couple weeks ago. So check that out if you haven't already. Talking about Con Kneppel out of Duke. Could he be the next Gordon Hayward? So some exciting things coming up there. Maybe not a franchise-changing player, but certainly some enticing prospects there in that draft pool coming up for the Utah Jazz. So there's that, and like I mentioned, next kind of bit of a theme here is the college sports realignment. Obviously, we know BYU went to the Big 12 a couple years ago. The whole ordeal with the Pac-12 and Utah going to the Big 12. Well, it's not stopping yet. There's still more changes to come. We already knew this. This is not necessarily breaking, but the news of Utah State going to the Pac-12, it became official, I suppose, with their university president and 4 other Mountain West opponents teams, letting that conference know that they will be leaving in the summer of 2026 and in time to begin the academic year, then starting with fall with football in the Pac-12 and what it is to become, right? Obviously, very different from the Pac-12 that Utah was in. Like I mentioned, several other Mountain West schools going with them to the Pac-12, so it might be a little similar to kind of to what we've already been seeing as far as competition level with Utah State, not up to a Big 12 level, for example. But could be exciting nonetheless. New teams, new vibe. Go play against those teams like an Oregon State, like a Washington State. Get on that West Coast a little more, Pacific Northwest, I guess, and see what the Aggies can do in a new conference. So a lot of new ahead for them, and a lot of new ahead for the Utah Valley Wolverines. We gave UVU a shout out. I believe it's just last week when we were breaking down some of the baseball news going on with the UVU baseball team, the Slick baseball team making it far in their respective tournaments, and some news out of UVU, the Wolverines also changing conferences, going from the WAC to the Big West, which is a team entirely made up of schools in California. So it will be a dozen California schools, Cal State, those types, and Utah Valley University, Wolverines. They'll be bringing some of those up and coming sports, like I mentioned, baseball, basketball, volleyball, soccer, maybe on the women's side. Unfortunately, the men's side, coached by Kyle Beckerman, not quite up to the level of competition maybe that they should be, with a former MLS legend at the head. But some exciting times coming up for the Wolverines. Um, and they'll be making that trek over to the Golden State a lot more often come 2026. So next year is that year of change for both Utah State and Utah Valley. And you know, I'm sure it won't be the end of these realignment, these changing of conferences in the coming years. Who knows? There was even talks of Utah jumping ship from the Big 12 as soon as after their first year. if they got a call from a bigger conference like the Big Ten. So, as we've come to expect, the cycle never ends, and there's always news when it comes to college sports. In fact, just in the world of college sports as well, this ruling coming down from uh, Supreme Court, ruling about that the universities can now share revenue with players. And so that, instead of it being the whole loophole of the NIL funds and the outside businesses giving paying athletes for their name, image, and likeness, now it's just we're kind of cutting out the middleman, and we're gonna be seeing some payment straight to athletes from universities. So it's come a long way, certainly in the NCAA in the recent years, and man, it seems like this is really just the beginning and what could open up a world of change yet again for college sports with transfer portal and more tons of money involved. Obviously, it's worked out for some Utah schools so far with a guy like AJ Devonta coming to BYU with what was said to be a multi-million-dollar deal. So um, for some, it works out, and we'll see how it in the long term how this paying players in college sports works out. I think if the teams are making money, if the universities are making money, the guys on the field probably should too. The ones that are actually making it for you. So good for them there, I guess, for the college athletes. And that kind of brings us to the end of that little news run up there. Um, Soccer, obviously, still in season, as I've mentioned. It was a bit of a national team break here. Both U.S. women's national team and U.S. men's national team playing games this week. And ironically, though, the women, the Utah Royals, were also playing. So quick turnaround there for Ali Sentnor, especially from the Utah Royals, playing earlier in the week. I believe it was like Monday or Tuesday, maybe even Wednesday, for the U.S. women's national team. Scored 2 goals against Jamaica in a 4-0 win. So shout out to Ali. Hope to have her on the podcast soon. Mandy McGlynn, the other player from the Royals that was called up, did not appear in a game. Seems like she is kind of more of a backup option to Manchester United goalkeeper Fallon Tullis-Joyce, who started both games for the women's national team in that break. And then the Royals came back, Ali Sentnor and Mandy returning to the Utah Royals for a game in Louisville, where unfortunately the Royals picked up yet another loss. 6 games in a row without a win for Utah Royals, 8 in a row for RSL. So not quite to the level of RSL yet. But shout out to Utah local Sandy native Alta alum Brecken Mozingo. She has scored in 3 straight games for the Utah Royals. Scored once again in Louisville in a 3-2 loss for the Utah Royals. Bianca St. George picking up the other goal after she as well came back from international duty with Canada. So players picking up those sky miles, going back and forth between these different duties. And the Royals will be back at home this upcoming week on Friday and then Saturday the next week. So a couple great opportunities with the weather warming up, with players like Ali Sentnor and Brecken Mozingo playing some exciting soccer. A chance to come out to America First Field. Say what's up to me if you're out there. I'll come down and grab a J Dog or something like I mentioned last time, and or a churro, and we'll chat about the latest. We'll stand around the water. There actually are water fountains in America First Field, so we'll stand around the water fountains and have our water fountain talk, water cooler talk style. Like I mentioned, Royals in action, RSL not in action. So Diego Luna, the representative from RSL to the men's national team for the U.S., a bit of extended time away from Utah. He's playing in a couple friendlies with the men's team, and then they have the Gold Cup coming up in just a couple weeks against other CONCACAF teams. So you're looking at North America, Central America as the men's national team looks to turn things around a bit. 3 straight losses for the U.S. men's national team. There's a bit of, a little bit of drama, a little bit of gossip around that team. You look, players like Christian Pulisic and Weston McKennie not with the team currently in this window, even though we are just a year away from the World Cup being hosted here in the U.S. So, players like Diego Luna, just 21 years old, stepping up a bit. Diego did not get a goal in that game nor an assist. U.S. losing that game, unfortunately 2-1 after an early goal from Jack McGlynn from the Houston Dynamo. Diego came off, yeah, in the 60 something minute range, didn't get a full 90. They're kind of Mauricio Pochettino, the coach, former Tottenham coach. So, shout out to Los Spurs. And decided to place kind of mix it up, get some younger players in there, wanted some more experience, and pull Diego out so that some younger guys could get even younger than 21, right? Surprising, but some younger guys than Diego getting in there, some experience, because they're probably going to need it. If a guy like Christian Pulisic doesn't show up, you need players that can step up in these important moments in a tournament like the Gold Cup coming up for the U.S. men's national team. Certainly, Diego Luna will get his time to shine. They've got another friendly coming up on Tuesday. And then I'm sure he is on the Gold Cup roster, so he will factor into those games as well because he's having a great season in MLS despite RSL's shortcomings. Diego Luna, 8 goals, couple assists. And I just read a quick article, shout out to Matthew Doyle on MLSsoccer.com. He just put up an article, looking at we're at the halfway point of the MLS season, so kind of looking at awards races, MVP, Young Player of the Year, which is what Diego Luna won last year. And according to Matt Doyle, his pick to win that award yet again is Diego Luna. So would be interesting to have a repeat Young Player of the Year. How long do you stay young for? Is that a bit subjective? I'll have to look that up and see. Is there an official rule of when a player is no longer eligible for Young Player of the Year? It might be 22, 23. Who knows? Diego turns 22 in September. So um, maybe, hopefully, he'll still be eligible. We'll see. Um, Won it last year. I thought of it as more of like a Rookie of the Year award, but I guess it's a little different. If you can't repeat as Rookie of the Year, but I guess you can repeat as Young MLS Young Player of the Year. So all that to say, people are noticing Diego Luna obviously still having a great season. Um, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, we don't know how much longer Diego Luna will be here. The transfer window opens up in July for MLS, and that also corresponds with the international European trade window when, teams from Spain, Italy, England, Germany might be interested in Diego Luna. Like Pablo Mastroeni said, you know, he'd be surprised if he was still here after the summer break. So enjoy him while we got him, I guess. And looking forward to Diego putting on for the national team, and then coming back here for couple. We got a couple games coming up for RSL. They play through the month of July as well. The NWSL takes a break in July, but RSL will still be playing because they've got a mid-season tournament, the Leagues Cup, against Mexican teams. So. Plenty of games if you're looking to check out a game at America First Field, both on the men's and women's side throughout the summer, and some chances to see these exciting young players, both 21 years old, Diego Luna, Ali Sentinor, um, representing their country and playing some exciting soccer. So shout out to them. We'll be watching the Diego closely in these upcoming games and hoping that some of the success they're having with the national team, especially for Ali Sentinor, 2 goals for the national team, only one this season for the Royals. So hopefully that can spur some scoring from Sentinor, and she can join Brecken Mazingo as a dual threat for two-headed dragon for the Utah Royals. That's what we've got for this week's show. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll be back next week. We'll see you.